Welcome to Bully Tales. Before we dive into this incredible story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now, and drop a comment telling me, what would you do if you were in this situation? Would you stay silent, or would you speak up? I really want to know your thoughts. Now, settle in and get comfortable, because the story you're about to hear will leave you absolutely speechless. And Aslo tells what would you do if you were there. She worked there for only 5 days. 5 days before she did the one thing that should have ended her career forever, she punched a billionaire in front of 200 people. Everyone thought they knew why. They were wrong. Because the man they called untouchable wasn't the villain at all, and that single punch was about to expose something far darker than anyone in that room was prepared for. It happened at the Sterling Rose, one of those restaurants where the silverware costs more than most people's monthly rent and the guest list reads like a Forbes Top 100. But what happened that January evening in 2025 wasn't about wealth or power, it was about something far more valuable. Truth. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will remind you that sometimes the least likely person in the room holds all the power. Picture this: the Sterling Rose restaurant, Friday night, packed with over 200 guests. Crystal glasses catching the candlelight like tiny stars, classical music floating through the air. Rich people doing what rich people do, smiling, networking, pretending their problems don't exist. But then something shifted. The music didn't stop because the pianist took a break. No, it stopped because every conversation in that room died at once. Complete silence. The kind that makes your stomach drop because you know something terrible is about to happen. In the center of that elegant dining room stood Chase Thornton. Tall, devastatingly handsome, wearing a custom suit that probably cost more than a car. His perfectly styled brown hair, athletic build and that maroon and white varsity jacket, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. He was the heir to Thornton Global Industries, the son of New York's most powerful billionaire, Richard Thornton. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone feared him too. And right now, Chase was pointing one perfectly manicured finger at a young server whose hands shook so badly the empty tray nearly slipped from his grip. "You absolute idiot," Chase's voice cut through the silence like a blade, that charming smile nowhere to be seen. "You almost spilled red wine on my jacket. Do you have any idea what this costs? You're fired. Get out of my sight right now." The server's face went pale. His lips trembled. He looked like he wanted to speak, wanted to explain, but terror trapped every word in his throat. Everyone watched. The other servers froze mid-step. The security team near the entrance shifted uncomfortably. Even the restaurant manager stood motionless, her tablet pressed against her chest. They all knew what was coming. Chase Thornton always destroyed someone when he got angry. He had done it before, many times, and nobody ever stopped him. Nobody ever dared. But then something impossible happened. A voice cut through the tension. Not loud, not aggressive, but clear and steady, like a bell cutting through fog. "Excuse me, sir. That's not what happened." Every head in that restaurant turned. 200 pairs of eyes searching for whoever was brave enough, or crazy enough, to challenge Chase Thornton in front of Manhattan's elite. And there she stood. A woman in her late 20s, average height, solid build, wearing the simple black uniform of a server. Her name tag read, Lucia. Lucia Reyes, a black Latina woman from the Bronx who had started working at the Sterling Rose exactly 5 days ago. 5 days. She barely knew where the wine cellar was, and here she was, standing up to the man everyone else feared. "What did you just say?" Chase hissed, his blue eyes flashing with rage and shock. But Lucia didn't flinch. Her posture stayed straight, her eyes remained respectful but absolutely firm. She repeated herself, this time louder so the entire room could hear. "I said that's not what happened, sir." Someone bumped into him from behind. He didn't do anything wrong. The room seemed to stop breathing. Chase took 3 sharp steps toward Lucia, his expensive shoes clicking hard against the polished floor. "Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this?" What nobody knew, what nobody could see, was that Richard Thornton himself had just stepped back inside from the private terrace where he'd been taking an urgent business call. He stood near the glass doors, partially hidden by an elegant pillar. He heard the tension crackling in the air. He saw his son's face, twisted with fury. And he saw this server, this woman he'd never noticed before, standing firm when everyone else cowered in fear. Richard didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply watched. And something inside him, something he'd been ignoring for months, finally stirred awake. A small voice in his mind began to whisper, "Is this really who my son has become?" Chase's voice rose even higher, sharp enough to shatter glass. "You're fired. Both of you. Pack your things and get out of my restaurant." "Your restaurant?" Lucia's voice didn't waver. "Sir, with all due respect, I only spoke the truth." That's when it happened. The moment that would crack everything wide open. The moment that would reveal secrets nobody expected. The server, the one Chase was about to destroy, suddenly dropped to his knees right there on that beautiful floor. His voice broke. Tears streamed down his young face. "Please, sir, please don't do this. My mom just had a stroke. She needs round-the-clock care. I need this job. I'm begging you, please." A collective gasp rippled through the dining room. Some guests looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared in shock. This wasn't the kind of scene that happened at places like the Sterling Rose. This was raw pain, real desperation. And from his position by the terrace doors, Richard Thornton whispered to himself, barely audible, "What kind of man have I raised?" He started to step forward, ready to intervene, ready to finally see clearly what had been right in front of him all along. But then something else happened. Something nobody expected. Chase's hand flew through the air without warning, fast, aimed directly at Lucia's face with all the force of his rage behind it. Everyone knew what was coming. They had seen Chase humiliate people before. They had watched good people crumble under his cruelty. But this time was different. Because Lucia didn't freeze. Didn't flinch. Didn't accept it. Her fist came up and connected squarely with Chase's jaw. The sound echoed through the Sterling Rose like a gunshot. Chase stumbled backward, his hand flying to his face, shock and pain flooding his features. The entire restaurant erupted. Gasps, screams, chairs scraping, security rushing forward. Richard Thornton stepped out from behind the pillar, his face a mixture of shock and something else, something that almost looked like relief. "Oh my God," someone shrieked. "She hit him. She actually hit him." Lucia stood there, breathing hard, her hand still clenched in a fist. Her eyes were wide, like she couldn't believe what she'd just done. Like her body had moved before her brain could stop it. "I'm sorry," Lucia said, her voice shaking now. "I'm sorry, but I won't let you hurt people anymore." Security reached for Lucia, but Richard raised his hand sharply. "Stop. Don't touch her." Everyone froze. Chase clutched his face, shock and humiliation flooding his features. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "Did you see what she did? Arrest her, fire her, destroy her." But Richard's eyes weren't on Chase. They were on Lucia. And for the first time in a very long time, Richard Thornton was actually seeing clearly. Before we go any further, before you understand how this night unraveled into something bigger than anyone could predict, I need you to do something. If you're finding this story powerful, if it's touching your heart, hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, don't wait. Click it. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more stories like this. We're building a community here of people who believe courage still matters, who know that one voice can change everything. So subscribe now, turn on notifications, and let's continue this journey together. Now, back to the story, because we need to go back to 5 days earlier, when Lucia first arrived at the Sterling Rose with nothing but determination in her eyes and bills to pay. Because every ending has a beginning, and this story started long before that punch was thrown. Lucia Reyes walked into the Sterling Rose for her first day of work. She had grown up in the Bronx, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Lucia knew what hard work meant. She knew what struggle looked like, and she knew how to survive. The restaurant industry wasn't new to her. She'd been serving tables since she was 16, working her way through community college, sending money home when her mom got sick. But the Sterling Rose was different. This wasn't some neighborhood diner. This was where the powerful came to be seen, where deals worth millions happened over wine that cost more per bottle than Lucia made in a week. The head server, an older woman named Patricia, gathered the staff for orientation. "We have high standards here," Patricia said, her voice crisp and professional. "Our clientele expects perfection. You will be polite, efficient, and invisible. Understood?" The servers nodded. Lucia listened carefully. She noticed how everyone seemed tense, nervous, like they were waiting for something bad to happen. During her first shift, Lucia quickly understood why. Chase Thornton came in that evening with his father and several business associates. He was breathtaking, absolutely stunning, and he knew it. That varsity jacket over his designer clothes, that confident swagger. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, and technically, in a way, his family did. Richard Thornton owned a controlling stake in the Sterling Rose, which meant Chase acted like he controlled everything too. Lucia watched from across the room as Chase snapped his fingers at servers, as he sent back perfectly good dishes with cruel comments, as he made a busboy nearly cry because he didn't bring his water fast enough. Nobody said anything. Nobody dared. After the shift, Lucia cornered one of the veteran servers, an older man named Thomas. "Hey," she said quietly. "What's the deal with that guy?" Thomas glanced around nervously before answering. "That's Chase Thornton, Mr. Thornton's son. He's been coming here for years, and he's hell on wheels." Lucia frowned. "And everyone just lets him treat people like that?" Thomas sighed heavily. "Listen, Lucia, you seem like you've got a good head on your shoulders, so let me give you some advice. Stay out of his way. If he's angry, don't make eye contact. If he blames you for something, just apologize even if you didn't do it. Don't argue, don't defend yourself. Just survive." Lucia listened, but something in her gut rejected every word. She had spent her whole life watching people with power abuse people without it. She had promised herself she would never be the kind of person who just looked away. Still, for 4 days, Lucia kept her head down. She worked hard. She was polite to everyone, including Chase. She avoided conflict. But she watched. And the more she watched, the more she noticed something strange, something nobody else seemed to see. Chase's cruelty wasn't random. It followed a pattern. Every time Chase received a phone call, within minutes, he would explode at someone. Every time documents were placed in front of him at dinner, his hands would shake. Every time his father left the room, Chase's face would change. The mask would slip for just a second. And underneath all that arrogance, Lucia saw something else. Fear. Real, deep, bone-chilling fear. "What are you so afraid of?" Lucia thought to herself one evening, watching Chase scream at a chef. Then came the 5th day. The day everything changed. It started like any other Friday evening. The Sterling Rose was packed. The city's elite filled every table. Chase and Richard sat in their usual corner booth, surrounded by business associates and socialites. Lou. CIA was assigned to their section. She moved through her duties efficiently, refilling glasses, clearing plates, staying invisible, just like she'd been trained. Then Chase's phone rang. Lucia saw him glance at the screen. Saw his face go pale. Saw him excuse himself and step into the private hallway near the restrooms. Lucia shouldn't have followed. She knew that. But something in her gut told her to pay attention. She moved quietly down the hallway, staying just out of sight. Chase's voice drifted through the corridor, low and desperate. "I'm doing everything you asked. Please, you promised this would end." A man's voice responded, cold and sharp. "It ends when I say it ends. You know what happens if you don't cooperate." Chase's voice cracked. "My family has nothing left. You already took everything from my uncle's side. Then make sure Daddy keeps his mouth shut about the merger. Do your job, Chase, or your little sister won't make it to her college graduation." The call ended. Lucia pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She heard Chase breathing heavily in the hallway, heard him composing himself, heard his footsteps returning to the dining room. When Lucia returned to the floor, Chase was already in a rage. He was screaming at the young server about the wine that hadn't spilled, about disrespect, about incompetence. And Lucia understood. This wasn't about the wine. This was never about the wine. Chase was trapped, and his cruelty was the only weapon he had left. So when Chase raised his hand to slap that terrified young man, when Lucia spoke up to defend him, when Chase's fury turned toward her instead, Lucia didn't see a villain. She saw a young man drowning. But that didn't mean she was going to let him hurt anyone else. And that's when her fist flew. The Sterling Rose descended into chaos after the punch. Security surrounded Lucia immediately. Guests were shouting. Some were recording on their phones. Chase was demanding that Lucia be arrested, his face already swelling where her fist had connected. But Richard Thornton stood perfectly still in the center of it all, his mind racing. He had seen everything, the fear in the young server's eyes, the desperation, Lucia's intervention, and then the punch that changed everything. "Call the police!" Chase shrieked, clutching his jaw. "I want her arrested for assault. I want charges pressed. I want her destroyed." Richard finally moved. He walked slowly toward Chase, his face unreadable. "Chase," he said quietly. "Stop." Chase stared at him in disbelief. "Stop? Dad, she hit me. Did you see what she did?" "I saw," Richard said. "And I want to know why." "Why what?" Chase's voice rose to a near scream. "Why it happened. Why you were about to strike an employee. Why you've been acting this way for months." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every eye was on them now. Chase's face cycled through emotions, rage, fear, desperation, finally settling on something that looked almost like relief. "You want to know why?" he whispered. "You really want to know?" Then Richard said something that shocked everyone in that room. "Yes. I want to know everything." And Chase, for the first time in months, told the truth. "It started 6 months ago," Chase said, his voice shaking. "Before you finalized the acquisition of Uncle David's tech company." Richard's face went pale. "Chase, what are you talking about?" "Uncle David didn't want to sell," Chase continued. "He built that company from nothing. It was his life. But your head of acquisitions, Victor Reyes, he gave me a job. He told me I could prove myself, help with the family business." The name hit Richard like a punch. Victor Reyes was his former head of acquisitions, a man Richard had trusted completely until 6 months ago when irregularities in his department led to his dismissal. Chase's words tumbled out now like water breaking through a dam. "Victor came to me privately. He said he needed inside information about Dad's plans. He said it was standard practice, part of due diligence. I was stupid enough to believe him. Chase. Richard breathed. I gave him everything. Financial projections, merger strategies, confidential deals. And then Uncle David's company mysteriously collapsed. Accounting scandals, regulatory violations, stock manipulation. Within 3 months, Uncle David lost everything. The business, his reputation, his savings. Gasps echoed through the Sterling rows. Uncle David had a breakdown. Chase's voice broke completely. He's in a psychiatric facility now. Aunt Marie had to sell their house. My cousin had to drop out of college. Richard reached for his son, but Chase stepped back. After it happened, Victor came to me again. He told me he'd fabricated everything. That he'd manufactured the scandal to force the acquisition. And he told me if I said anything to anyone, if I told you, if I went to the police, he would release the evidence showing I was his accomplice. That I'd knowingly helped destroy my own uncle. The pieces fell into place in Richard's mind with sickening clarity. The leaked merger information. The confidential deals that had fallen apart. The insider trading investigation had nearly destroyed his reputation. It was all connected to Victor. And to Chase. So every phone call, Richard said slowly. Every time you exploded at someone. Chase nodded miserably. Every time Victor called with new demands, I had to do something to release the pressure. I couldn't let you see what was happening to me. I couldn't let anyone see. So I became the monster everyone expected me to be. Lucia, still standing where security had grabbed her, felt tears running down her face. She had been right. The cruelty had been armor, survival, fear. Richard turned to his head of security. Get me every security camera recording from this restaurant for the past 6 months. Get me phone records, get me everything. Then he turned back to Chase. You should have told me. You should have come to me. Chase laughed bitterly. And said what? Dad, I helped destroy Uncle David's life. Dad, I gave away your company's secrets. I was trapped, Dad. I've been trapped for 6 months. The truth is out now, Richard said firmly. And Victor Reyes will pay for what he's done. To your uncle. To you. To everyone he's hurt. He turned to Lucia, who still stood frozen between 2 security guards. And you. Lucia swallowed hard. Sir, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hit him. I just. Richard raised his hand. You did something nobody else had the courage to do. You broke through the lie. The security team released Lucia immediately. Chase looked at Lucia for a long moment. You could have just walked away, he said softly. Everyone else did. Lucia met his eyes. I don't walk away from bullies. Even when the bully is just as trapped as everyone else. The words hung in the air between them. Something passed between these 2 people from completely different worlds. Understanding. Recognition. Respect. Richard pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyers tonight. We end this tonight. We bring Victor Reyes down. And that's exactly what happened. Over the next 72 hours, everything unraveled. Security footage confirmed Lucia's account of the evening. The punch had come only after Chase raised his hand first. The district attorney reviewed the case and determined no charges would be filed against Lucia. The video footage also revealed something else: Chase's phone conversations in the private hallways, his shaking hands when certain documents appeared, his fear. Richard's legal team, now armed with Chase's full testimony, launched an investigation into Victor Reyes. What they found was staggering. Victor had been running a criminal enterprise within Thornton Global Industries for years. Blackmail, extortion, corporate sabotage. He had targeted dozens of small business owners, destroying their lives to force acquisitions. Chase's uncle was just one of many. The FBI arrested Victor Reyes on a Tuesday morning. The charges included racketeering, extortion, blackmail, and conspiracy. The case made national headlines. Billionaire's company harbored criminal enterprise. Former executive faces life in prison. Heir to fortune caught in corporate conspiracy. But Richard Thornton didn't escape unscathed. His company faced investigations, lawsuits, public scrutiny. He had to answer for how his obsession with growth had created an environment where someone like Victor could thrive. Richard took responsibility publicly. He established a victims fund for everyone Victor had hurt. He reformed his company's practices from top to bottom. And he began the long process of rebuilding his relationship with his son. Chase withdrew from public life after the scandal broke. He started therapy. He began visiting his uncle at the psychiatric facility. He started making amends with the employees he'd hurt. It would take years, but slowly, Chase Thornton began to transform from the man fear made him into the man he was meant to be. As for Lucia, she went back to work at the Sterling Rose. The story had made her famous for a moment. News outlets wanted interviews. Social media called her a hero. But Lucia refused it all. She just wanted to work, to survive, to send money home to her mom, to live her life. ## 3 months later. 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Lucia was working her usual shift when a young man walked into the Sterling Rose. The hostess tried to turn him away. "I'm sorry, sir, but we require reservations." The man smiled sadly. "I'm not here to eat. I just need to speak with someone." He pointed across the room. "With her." Lucia looked up from the table she was clearing and froze. Chase Thornton stood in the entrance, looking nothing like the man who had terrorized this restaurant. He wore simple jeans and a sweater. No designer clothes, no varsity jacket, no mask. The two of them stared at each other across the dining room. Finally, Chase walked forward slowly. Lucia met him halfway. They stood in the center of the Sterling Rose, in the exact spot where everything had changed 3 months earlier. "I wanted to thank you," Chase said quietly. "For what?" Lucia asked. "For punching you." Chase smiled, really smiled, for perhaps the first time in months. "No. For seeing me. Everyone else just saw the monster. You saw the person underneath." Lucia nodded slowly. "I saw someone trapped. Just like the rest of us. Just surviving the only way you knew how." Chase reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope. He placed it in Lucia's hand. "What's this?" Lucia asked. Chase's eyes filled with tears. "It's a letter. An explanation, an apology, and a promise." Lucia opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with neat handwriting. It read, **, you didn't save me with kindness. You saved me with truth. Sometimes we need someone to break through our armor, even if it hurts, to remind us we're still human underneath. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be. Thank you for standing up when everyone else stayed silent, **. I'm taking time away to work on myself, to make amends, to become someone I can be proud of. But I wanted you to know that what you did that night changed my life. You gave me my freedom back. Not because you defended me, but because you refused to accept the lie, **. Keep being brave, Lucia. The world needs more people like you, **. Chase. Lucia looked up, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to be okay. You know that, right?" Chase nodded. "For the first time in months, I actually believe that." They stood there for another moment. Two people from completely different worlds, connected by one impossible night. Then Chase turned and walked out of the Sterling Rose. Lucia watched him go, the letter still clutched in her hand. Around her, the restaurant continued its elegant chaos. Wealthy people dining, servers moving gracefully between tables, music playing softly, life going on. But something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed. Hashtag the opportunity. That night, after her shift ended, Lucia walked through Manhattan streets toward the subway. The city hummed with its usual energy, millions of people living their lives, fighting their battles, carrying their secrets. And Lucia thought about how easy it would have been to stay silent that night. How everyone expected her to look away, to accept injustice, to let cruelty slide because that's just how the world works. But she hadn't. She had spoken up. She had stood firm. And yes, she had thrown a punch that probably wasn't the smartest choice. But sometimes the right choice isn't the smart choice. Sometimes the right choice is just the human choice, to stand up, to speak out, to refuse to accept that some people matter more than others. As Lucia descended into the subway, her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, the head server. Richard Thornton wants to meet with you tomorrow. No trouble. He wants to offer you something. Lucia smiled and typed back, I'll be there. The next morning. Lucia sat in Richard Thornton's office, 50 floors above Manhattan. Richard looked tired but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Miss Reyes, Richard began. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything, Lucia said. Yes, I do. You saw something in my son, in my family, that I was too blind to see. You acted when action was needed, and you did it knowing it might cost you everything. Lucia shrugged. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. Richard smiled. That's exactly why I want to offer you a position. Head of our new employee advocacy program. We're building a system where workers can report abuse, corruption, anything, without fear of retaliation. I need someone who understands what it's like to have no power. Someone who will fight for the people everyone else ignores. Lucia stared at him. Are you serious? Yes. Without hesitation, yes. Because some moments demand action. Some moments require courage. And some moments define who we really are. This is the truth I want to leave with you tonight. You will face moments when you must choose between comfort and courage, between silence and speaking up, between looking away and standing firm. In those moments, remember Lucia. Remember that one person really can make a difference. Remember that the right choice isn't always the easy choice. And remember that sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the greatest truth. The question isn't whether those moments will come. They will. The question is, what will you do when they arrive? Will you stay silent, or will you speak? Will you look away, or will you stand firm? Will you accept injustice, or will you fight for what's right? The choice is always yours. And that choice, more than anything else, defines who you. Real courage isn't about being fearless, it's about acting with integrity even when you're terrified. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly or perfectly, but it arrives when ordinary people refuse to accept cruelty as normal. And sometimes the person with the least power in the room carries the greatest strength, because they have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Stand up. Speak out. Be brave. The world is waiting for people like you. Thank you for watching until the very end. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Are you in the United States, Canada, the UK, Nigeria, somewhere else? We love hearing from our global family. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that courage still matters. One voice can change everything, including yours. Subscribe now, and let's keep sharing stories that remind us what it means to be human.